But first, our top story here in Singapore tonight. Parliament has kicked off a highly anticipated debate on proposed anti-fake news laws, with both sides of the aisle crossing swords on the details of the new legislation, such as who should be first to decide what's a falsehood. This came after Law and Home Affairs Minister Shanmugam reiterated the importance of having new levers to deal specifically and quickly with online falsehoods. Errol Lim with this report.
Thank you, sir.
Law Minister Shanmugam came out strongly against critics who decry the bill, which they say gives broad powers to the government.
The bill provides for a narrower set of powers compared with powers that the government already has,
listing acts such as the Broadcasting Act and the Telecommunications Act. He said the government is already able to order the takedown of any objectionable material based on public interest. And the transmission of false messages is already a crime under existing laws. The new legislation will bring with it advantages. For example, judges will have more oversight as the bill provides for direct appeal to the courts, in addition to judicial review that's also in the other laws. He raised global trends to show the need to promote honest speech in public discourse through the bill, amid growing populism due to serious loss of trust in the governments and institutions, both public and private. This resulted from growing inequality, ineffective political systems, both made worse by traditional and new media. In the UK, he noted that mainstream media carried false headlines before Brexit, such as the influx of 12 million Turks.
In an active democracy, the foundations include trust, free speech, and an infrastructure of fact. The four elements I referred to have combined like a battering ram to damage, destroy these foundations. When people lose trust, when they lose faith, when there is no proper public discourse, when infrastructure of fact is damaged, ability of countries to face challenges will be weakened.
As for new media, it was used to mislead through sending falsehoods on an industrial scale by different actors. Besides groups driven by profit or hate, foreign countries may also use it to attack other states.
Singapore is a specific and vulnerable target for some very precise reasons. It has military superiority in this region, and experts said this. That superiority in conventional forces means it will be futile to start a war with Singapore. And therefore, militarily weaker countries will then focus on other means to weaken Singapore, sap our will from inside, create deep internal divisions, and keep us in a permanent state of internal dissension. And the evidence is that this is already happening.
These falsehoods may go viral and sometimes prove fatal, as in the cases of India and Mexico, where men were lynched after fake WhatsApp messages spread of child abduction rumors. Falsehoods could also harm public health and financial markets.
If and when this happens in Singapore, there will be a deep damage to the institutions which are beyond and above politics. We are seeing this happen before our very eyes in other countries, and if that happens, that will damage society beyond repair. There is no benefit, whether political or otherwise, in seeing this happen.
The government spoke on tools that malicious actors use to create conflict, such as bots, digital advertising, and algorithms used to rank content. Many monetize these services, which include using online propaganda to start street protests. And of course, with big tech companies enabling the spread of fake news, the minister emphasized the need for regulation. He said they've continuously refused to take down hate speech or ban its promotion, leading to tragedies all over, from the mosque shooting in New Zealand, recent bomb blasts in Sri Lanka, to a latest synagogue attack in America.
Tech companies are not our enemies. They are our partners, and we must work with them to solve problems. But at the same time, we need to be quite clear about the dynamics. They are focused on profit. And there is little incentive for them to do things which will affect their profits. They must know, we must make sure they know there is public interest, they can make profit but not at the expense of Singaporeans. Singapore government cannot be bought. We don't take money from their lobbyists. These are not children's games. This is serious business.
According to Mr. Shanmugam, there can't be serious dispute that the legislation is necessary. The only question is what should be legislated.
Mr. Shanmugam addressed criticisms and concerns about the bill. There are fears that the definition of fact and opinion may not be clear enough and that it may be difficult to challenge a minister's opinion. Tan Se-hui reports.
If a writer publishes an online article stating that the social welfare system in Singapore has gaps and substantiates it with interviews by government officials and social workers, this will not be covered under the bill. But if the person cites a social worker saying that the welfare assistance had been denied to a needy elderly person and that information was found to be untrue or manufactured, then it is a false statement of fact. This can come under the proposed new laws. And it was one of the examples raised by the Law and Home Affairs Minister to illustrate the difference between fact and opinion. Some academics had raised their concerns about this point as they worry it could result in academic research being stifled. Mr. Shanmugam said such fears are unfounded. He also responded to concerns that too much power is being given to the government, resulting in a chilling effect.
This must be one of the most overused phrases. Free speech should not be affected by this bill. We are talking here about falsehoods, we are talking about bots, we are talking about trolls, we are talking about fake accounts, and so on. It's important to remember that the bill does not cover statements just because they are against public interest. Those statements must be false statements of fact in the first place.
On public interest, some skeptics also feel that it should not include a clause that relates to the decrease of public confidence in the functions of government institutions. But Mr. Shanmugam said that it is important to protect institutions precisely because falsehoods target them to break down trust. He reassured the House that the laws would allow for challenges to a minister's direction and that these will be fast and simple.
A person aggrieved by a direction will have the opportunity to have his or her case heard in the High Court as early as 9 days after he initiates a challenge by writing to the minister. They will have to be working days. The court will continue, of course, to have a general discretion to extend timelines where there is good reason to do so.
He added that costs will be kept low for individuals with no court fees charged for 3 days and further days of hearing charged at the usual rate. Even then, he explained that the court will have power to waive the fees. Finally, Mr. Shanmugam addressed the notice of amendments that 3 nominated MPs had recently made. One of the proposals was for an independent council to be established. But Mr. Shanmugam said all functions of the council can be achieved under the current structure of the public service, which will ensure proper accountability.